sees Tumbleton. He dares me to rain fire down on a seat that raised my banner.
You! Go with them!
What's coming?
Does he mean to somehow... Oh my.
My purpose is to restore the rightful line to the Iron Throne.
It is the will of the gods.
One man, 15,000 soldiers, a legendary Valyrian steel sword, and a mission that could change the entire fate of the Dance of the Dragons. While everyone has been focused on Emond, Daemon, and Rhaenyra, another dangerous player has quietly entered the war, and he may be far more important than most fans realize. Ormund Hightower isn't a dragon rider, yet he commands the largest army left in Westeros. He's calm under pressure, fearless when threatened, and completely devoted to one goal, making sure Rhaenyra Targaryen never keeps the Iron Throne. But who is Ormund Hightower really? Is he truly the Green's greatest commander, or has history given him more credit than he deserves? And why could his decisions in House of the Dragon Season 3 completely reshape the war? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the complete history of Ormund Hightower, his family, his hidden motivations, his greatest victories, his biggest failures, and the fate that awaits him according to George R. Martin's Fire and Blood. Be warned, this video contains major book spoilers. When House of the Dragon first introduced Ormund Hightower, many viewers probably didn't think much of him. Compared to characters like Daemon Targaryen, Aemond One-Eye, Criston Cole, or Rhaenyra herself, he seemed like another noble lord stepping onto the board. But that first impression couldn't be more misleading. As the story moves into Season 3, Ormund is positioned to become one of the most influential leaders on the Green side. Not because he rides a dragon or swings the biggest sword, but because he controls something that may be even more valuable during a civil war: an enormous army, limitless resources, and one of the richest houses in all of Westeros. Unlike many commanders who inherit only a title, Ormund inherits the full strength of House Hightower, a family that has stood as one of the oldest and most powerful noble houses in the Seven Kingdoms for thousands of years. Long before the Targaryens ever crossed the Narrow Sea, the Hightowers ruled Oldtown, controlled trade across the south, and built wealth that rivaled even the Lannisters. Their influence stretched through politics, religion, commerce, and military power, making them one of the true pillars of Westeros. By the time the Dance of the Dragons begins, that influence has only grown stronger. Ormund is the son of Lord Robert Hightower, the older brother of Otto Hightower. That makes him Otto's nephew and Queen Alicent Hightower's cousin. This connection is far more important than it first appears. While many Green supporters fight because they believe Aegon II is the rightful king according to tradition, Ormund's reasons are also deeply personal. The Hightowers have married into the royal family, placing their own blood on the Iron Throne through Alicent's children. If Rhaenyra wins the war completely, everything Otto spent decades building could disappear overnight. The Hightower influence over the monarchy would be destroyed, and another branch of the Targaryen family would rule instead. That means Ormund isn't simply fighting for a king, he's fighting for the future of his own house. Every battle he fights protects generations of political power that his family has worked to secure. Following the death of Lord Robert, Ormund becomes the Lord of Oldtown and head of House Hightower. Along with the title comes tremendous responsibility. Thousands of knights swear loyalty to him, vast stores of gold fill his treasury, and countless noble families look toward Oldtown for leadership. More importantly, Prince Daeron Targaryen, Alicent's youngest son, effectively comes under Ormund's protection. Unlike Aemond, who commands fear through the power of Vhagar, Daeron is still young and relatively inexperienced. Ormund becomes one of the key figures responsible for leading the Southern Campaign alongside him. Together, they represent a dangerous combination. One commands the largest remaining army, while the other rides one of the strongest dragons still fighting for the Greens. Individually, they are formidable. Together, they become one of the greatest military threats Rhaenyra will have to face. One of the most fascinating things about Ormund is the confidence he displays almost immediately. When others attempt to intimidate him, he rarely loses his composure. He speaks with certainty, carries himself with authority, and never appears shaken, even when facing impossible odds. On the surface, this confidence makes him look like a brilliant commander. But as we continue exploring his story, an important question begins to emerge. Is that confidence earned through genuine military genius, or is it simply the confidence of a man who has always possessed overwhelming advantages? After all, it's much easier to appear fearless when you command 15,000 soldiers, possess enormous wealth, and know that one of the Green's dragons is marching beside your army. Confidence and competence are not always the same thing. And House of the Dragon Season 3 may challenge everything viewers initially believe about Ormund Hightower. There are also small details about his personality that quietly reveal who he really is beneath the armor. One of the most talked about moments surrounding Ormund involves the scented pomander he occasionally raises to his nose. At first glance, it seems insignificant, almost humorous. Yet it tells us something deeper about his character. While soldiers and common people endure the filth, blood, smoke, and terrible smells of war without complaint, Ormund instinctively reaches for perfume to shield himself from unpleasant odors. It reflects the life he has always known, a life surrounded by luxury, refinement, and privilege. Unlike commanders who climb through hardship, Ormund was born into extraordinary power. He has spent his life inside castles, among nobles, and at the center of wealth. That background shapes the way he sees the world. It doesn't necessarily make him weak, but it does create an interesting contrast between the polished nobleman and the brutal realities of the battlefield. That contrast may become one of the defining themes of his story. On paper, Ormund Hightower appears almost unstoppable. He possesses one of the strongest armies in Westeros, commands immense political influence, carries the ancestral Valyrian steel sword Vigilance, and fights beside Prince Daeron and the dragon Targaryen. History remembers him as one of the Green's greatest commanders, but history is often written by those looking back from a distance. Once the battles begin, the reality behind that reputation becomes far more complicated. Victory, defeat, luck, sacrifice, and fatal mistakes all begin to blur together. And before the dance of the dragons reaches its bloody conclusion, Ormund Hightower will discover that even the richest lord in Westeros cannot escape the cost of war. As the dance of the dragons grows even more brutal, Ormund Hightower finally begins the campaign that history will remember for generations. This is the point where he steps out of the shadow of Otto Hightower and starts creating his own legacy. No longer is he simply the nephew of the Hand of the King or the cousin of Queen Alicent. Now he is the commander leading the Green's largest remaining army, and every decision he makes could determine whether Aegon II keeps the Iron Throne or whether Rhaenyra's rule becomes permanent. But despite the praise that follows his name in the history books, there's one question that deserves to be asked. Was Ormund truly one of the greatest military commanders of his generation, or did he simply benefit from the incredible power that surrounded him? The first thing that made Ormund such a dangerous opponent wasn't his battlefield experience. It was the sheer size of the force under his command. Historical accounts place his army at around 15,000 soldiers, making it one of the largest armies still active during the later stages of the Dance of the Dragons. That alone completely changed the balance of power in the war. Every castle he approached had to think twice before resisting. Every lord had to decide whether loyalty to Rhaenyra was worth risking the destruction of their lands. Sometimes the threat of an army is even more powerful than the army itself, and Ormund understood exactly how to use that fear, but numbers alone never win wars in Westeros. Every commander eventually reaches a moment where strategy matters more than strength, and for Ormund, that moment came during his march toward Tumbleton. On the surface, his movements looked surprisingly cautious. He wasn't racing toward King's Landing in search of a glorious battle. Instead, he carefully secured towns, roads, and supply lines while slowly pushing deeper into territory that had declared support for Rhaenyra. It may have appeared slow, but every mile he gained increased the pressure on the Blacks. His army continued growing as more Green supporters joined his cause. While many smaller houses hesitated to openly resist such an overwhelming force, one of Ormund's smartest decisions was recognizing the importance of location. Rather than charging directly toward the heart of Rhaenyra's power, he positioned his forces where they could become a constant threat without exposing themselves unnecessarily. Every move forced Rhaenyra's supporters to react instead of attack. Even if battles weren't being fought every single day, Ormond was slowly changing the entire battlefield simply through positioning. In war, controlling where the enemy can move is often just as important as defeating them in combat. This careful advance also showed another side of his personality. Unlike warriors such as Daemon Targaryen, who often relied on bold risks and unpredictable attacks, Ormond preferred stability. He wanted his army organized, supplied, and disciplined before committing to major battles.